I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait for the new Persona game. I'm a huge fan of the previous games in the series, although I'll admit I'm a little hesitant about the new protagonist. I mean, just look at him. He looks like the love child of the protagonist from Persona 3 and 4, and raised by the dude from Catherine. Come on, he's lacking personality. He looks like another quiet, reserved, shy nerd who's going to need help making friends. Aw, poor little guy, he just needs a friend who will— Holy, what the fudge! Oh, jeez. Guys, I think the new protagonist might be evil. I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. Welcome to Professor Thorgi's Special Report. This week the trailer for Persona 5 finally premiered, and boy were we shocked! What we expected would be just like the last two games is now looking like it will be anything but. Now, if you missed it, click the annotation here to see my video about the top 10 points of interest in the trailer. But as I was compiling that list, little details started to jump out at me. Small things at first, but the more I watched and the more notes I started to take, the more I realized there's something here that this game isn't saying out loud, but is heavily hinting towards, and that is, could the protagonist of the new Persona game actually be the bad guys? Okay, so the first thing you're thinking is, well, of course they're the bad guys. Didn't you see the trailer? He's a thief. They're criminals. Yes, they're criminals. That's become very clear that these Persona users are performing heists. They're breaking into places and sneaking around in what look like museums, casinos, banks. It's hard to really tell, but they're clearly breaking into places that have high security. But that doesn't make them bad guys. That could just make them puckish rogues. Much in the same vein as Lupin III, or other characters where, sure, they steal from the wealthy, but they're still pretty good guys. They never hurt innocents. They even do the right thing from time to time. Or maybe they're even like Robin Hood, stealing from the rich to give to the poor, or at least stealing from the corrupt. So yes, that's possible, but let's look at some more evidence before we put these anti-heroes on trial. The first thing I noticed was the Velvet Room. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, the Velvet Room tends to relate to your journey in some way, shape, or form. A symbol of how you get from point A to point B in your story. In Persona 3, you're traveling up this 200-story building full of monsters, and the Velvet Room is an elevator. In Persona 4, you're living in a roadside town, and the Velvet Room is a limo, a way of traveling through a town full of roads. In Persona 5, the Velvet Room is a prison. Now sure, it could be there as a reminder to give the protagonist a constant warning that this could be your fate if you screw up. That is another part of the Velvet Room after all. The attendants are constantly reminding you that there is the possibility of failure. But when you look at the way he's being kept in there and how he's struggling against it, it makes it look like he's really being punished. Not to mention, why would the Velvet Room be punishing you when you enter? Unless the Velvet Room isn't quite your friend, more of a reluctant ally in this game, or maybe even an enemy to you. Now that alone seems like a bit of a stretch. As I said, they could still just be joyful, fun-loving rogues who are still good at heart. But let's look at these characters' behaviors, at what we can tell from their personalities. Clearly, these are characters who have been granted the power of personas, or some type of power, and while our previous protagonists have used these powers to protect others, as if there was some sort of a responsibility that came along with great power, these protagonists clearly have a different attitude. Look at the way in this trailer they're shown gliding through the town, running wild through it. I know that this isn't actual gameplay, just something to show them off in the trailer, but it does show their personality, their attitude. And this attitude says one thing to me: I do what I want. Science fiction all across the world, from America to Japan, have stories of people gaining great powers who decide to use that power for themselves. And we can tell from this trailer that these are characters with a personality that says, we run this town, the world is ours. And you thought he was just doing a silly dance, didn't you? Not to mention there are many other villainous tones. I mentioned in the last video that each Persona game revolves around a color. 3 was blue for its heavier and, let's face it, emo tone. 4 was yellow for its open and outgoing, warming spirit. For Persona 5, it is clearly red, and as I point out, red is meant to be more of an active and edgier color, which matches the fast-paced action of this game. But at the same time, red is also classically an evil color. It's a color that represents sinister and malicious intent, but the villainous look goes beyond just the color. I mean, just look at these people. These are not the outfits and looks of heroes. S&M devil catsuit, skull mask, and razor-sharp teeth. Heck, just look at the main character's persona itself. That thing looks flat out demonic. It looks like if Haunter and the evil version of Izanagi from Persona 4 fused together and became BFFs with Satan. That's your persona? That's your inner self? Or is it? To tell you what I mean by this, let's move on to the next piece of evidence, your enemies in the game. Now, in the past 2 Persona games, you used your persona to fight shadows. But in the brief gameplay you see here, we see that the creatures you're fighting aren't actually shadows, but instead we see Sandman and Pyrojack, 2 personas from the previous games. Now, in the first Persona game, as well as many other Shin Megami games, you would fight the monsters you would summon, and then would either pay them or convince them through conversation to join you. Now at first I thought, oh, well they're just going back to that style of gameplay in Persona 5, but then I thought about it. Based on the last 2 games, we know that Personas are the heroes and Shadows are the villains. So who would fight the heroes then? The villains, or more accurately, Shadows. That's right, here's my big theory, the bombshell I've been leading up to. I think that the hero of this new Persona game isn't using a persona at all. I think we're going to be using Shadows. What am I basing this all on? Well, to start, it's been established in the Persona world that Persona and Shadow are similar. That a shadow is the personification of repressed emotions, and a persona is a shadow that has been tamed. Now in Persona 4, it is interpreted as a shadow that's been accepted and is no longer repressed, so there have been various interpretations of this, and I'm sure it will change again in Persona 5. But for the most part, shadows are the more malicious and wicked thoughts of people. You know, wicked thoughts like greed, lust, inflated egos and sense of self, desire for power. Gee, who would have thoughts and emotions like that? Maybe, I don't know, criminals, thieves, just like the characters we've seen in this trailer. And from there we go into the way that these characters use their powers. Now in the previous games, the characters would summon out their personas, and those personas would be separate entities that would fight alongside the heroes. However, in this trailer, we never once see the personas coming out. We even see them using special moves without the personas appearing. Now combine this with the footage at the end, where we see the protagonist about to summon his persona, and the flames that represent the persona appearing consume his entire body. This led many people to think that in this game, you won't bring your personas out, but that you will transform into your persona or add their power to your own. Now let's think about what we've seen in the previous games. Who have we seen that transforms in order to use their powers?
That's right! Say it again! Yeah, that's right. I am me now. I'm not you anymore, see? I am a shadow, the true self.
That's right, shadows. Need more proof? In Persona 4, when a character confronts their shadow selves, those shadows have yellow eyes. Throughout the trailer, we see the protagonist with black or darker eyes, up until the moment when we see the persona being summoned, and he now has yellow eyes. So take all of that, the obvious criminal profession, the more sinister tone of this design, fighting personas, the way you summon your power, and everything we know about what shadows are made of, and everything so far to me points towards these characters not just being anti-heroes, but perhaps full-blown villains, and even shadows that fight personas instead of the other way around. But here's the thing, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. There have been tons of TV shows and movies, even games that have focused on the villains and made it the basis for really great stories. I think there's some really cool things you could do telling the story of someone using shadows instead of personas. Not to mention, imagine the crossovers! Each Persona game has had some kind of a little reference back to the previous games, whether it be the mention of someone on a TV or even visiting the locations of the previous game. And if these characters are indeed villains and criminals in this game, well, think about Persona 4. We had a detective, a cop, and a student who decided at the end of the game that they wanted to become a police officer. Imagine how great it would be if it was even just as a quick cameo to see Chief of Police Dojima ordering an adult Naoto and Chie to investigate this further. Or think about the next Persona fighting game. You don't need some crazy plot device to bring them all together. You just need to have Naoto and Mitsuru rallying their teams together to stop these evil Persona users. It practically writes itself. Man, I want to play these games now. Now make no mistake, I fully realize this is all just my impression off of this first video. But hey, we're all geeks and it's fun to speculate on these things, and I'm fully aware that by the time the second trailer or the full game comes out, then I'll be proven completely wrong, and I'm sure everyone will be happy to remind me of that here in the comments. But hey, that's fine, this has all been for fun after all, and I hope you had fun with it. If you like this video, then please hit the subscribe button for more great videos from the world of games, movies, and comics. So many videos about comics, and if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure to let me know that as well. This is my first time making a video that is just about a theory of mine, so if you want to see me doing that more as a regular thing, then let me know. But until next time, thanks for watching everyone.